The title of my sermon this morning is 1,000 Questions But One, and is drawn from the Gospel of John. The way we answer one great question either sets our faith on the margin of our lives, or it makes it the centerpiece. We have no other choice, because in the thousands of questions that can pour into our minds when we think of Easter, only one question matters. That being, did the resurrection happen? Easter's central question is not the only big question humans have asked. For example, as long as humans looked to the stars, they have wondered what was beyond our world. The question hung in the air, unanswered for millennia. Not until the middle of last century was it possible to consider its answer in the late 1940s. The development of large liquid fuel rockets made the prospect of human flight beyond the Earth's atmosphere and into the vacuum of space increasingly feasible from the standpoint of propulsion. As rockets went higher into the atmosphere, the answer regarding human space travel became more viable. The space race was about many issues, but the big one was, could it be done? Once the big question was answered, yes, human space travel was possible, more questions came from all sides. They started with questions such as, could life be sustained? If so, could human life be sustained? Then more questions developed. For instance, what about breathing? It's a simple question with a simple answer. Supply astronauts with enough oxygen and they'll be fine. The difficulty, however, was in the flow and pressure of oxygen. With either too much oxygen or too little, the astronauts couldn't survive. In time, scientists developed a solution, that being the oxygen regulator, which we enjoy as we make our flights across the country and across the ocean. Another question then emerged. Could astronauts move about if the pressure in the suit matched that of Earth's at sea level? The answer was no. But the pressure level needed to be high enough to detect a leak in either the suit or the spacecraft itself. Once the first question was answered, new ones rapidly emerged, sometimes an overwhelming number of them all at once. Each question needed to be answered for human space travel to happen. We have a choice in answering the big question of Easter. If we say no, then that's the end of it. The same would have been true in the 1940s if scientists had proven that space travel was impossible. We would have moved on. If one decides that Christ did not rise from the dead, then that person does not need Christianity. For that person, faith is of no consequence. We could choose to avoid the question, on the other hand. We could simply adopt the church's view. But at times, the church has given mixed messages. When we read the four resurrection accounts from the Gospels, for example, we discover that they are all different. One gospel account would have been enough, right? But that's not the case. As such, Christians must decide on the resurrection themselves. One cannot leave faith to the church. Over its 2,000 years, the church has also changed its mind. Sometimes the answers were too simplistic and ignored the developments of science and technology. Even the Episcopal Church hasn't had one set of responses to the questions affecting our belief. Over the centuries, it has changed its answers to many questions. Not that our church has done anything wrong, merely new information or situations have influenced each generation to see the world and their faith for their own. What if we choose not to answer the question of the resurrection? When troubling times arise for us or in the greater society, unanswered questions tend to return. For example, these days, we may wonder why God raised Jesus from the dead but allows our lives to be so difficult. Why does God allow the coronavirus to kill so many people? Or why do tragic events happen? If we haven't resolved for ourselves how God works in the world, then difficult questions increase our anxiety. What if we answer yes? Then two things happen. Our faith becomes the centerpiece of our lives, and 1,000 questions and more come into mind. For starters, what happened? How and why did the resurrection happen? Where did Jesus go after he died? What kind of body did he have? Did he really suffer on the cross as the Son of God? What does the resurrection mean? You see, the questions pour forth. They don't stop. Each answer produces a myriad of other questions, each layering on the next, just like the questions of space travel. Our questions haven't stopped for the last 2,000 years. The life of faith is not simple, but rather complex, dynamic, and intellectually stimulating. Faith can crowd our mind with puzzling and mysterious questions to ponder, whereas atheism begs few questions and only one answer, namely, there is no God. To believe is to have questions and to think, grow, and live in a world with more uncertainty and ambiguity, not less. Faith, however, opens the world to us and our minds. We see more and greater possibilities, not less. If our Christian faith is the centerpiece of our lives, then what? We may ask questions about God's work at the resurrection and God's work in the world as well. We may ask, why did God create us, and what about the world? Does God continue to act in the world? And if so, how? What about evil and natural disasters? The questions are not always straightforward, nor the answers. When we continue to ask questions, we come to our actions in the world. If God raised Jesus from the dead, then what is our purpose? How are we to live? Do we have an obligation to act in certain ways? If so, why? If not, why not? Easter demands a response from us. It is too radical and supernatural of an event to go unanswered in the lives of Christians. We need to decide yes or no. If we answer yes, then we must be prepared for more questions, greater complexities, and more profound mysteries. In a world so put on edge these days, our faith demands that we consider Easter, the resurrection, and its impact on our lives. For us to understand the world, God, and ourselves, then we must answer the one big question and let it shape us.